Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4 o'clock. First and foremost, I do want to introduce Sandra Rendell, our new Legislative Service Coordinator, and she comes to us from the MD of Fairview. Sandra, welcome, and thank you for choosing Hinton.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Council, any additions? Councillor Watt.
No additions. I was just
Administration?
No additions, thank you.
Councillor Watt.
Yeah, I move that we adopt the regular council agenda of November 3rd, 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council minutes for adoption. Council, any questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Nelson.
Move that council adopts the regular meeting of council minutes October 6, 2020, standing committee of council minutes October 13th, 2020, organizational meeting of council minutes October 20th, 2020, special meeting of council minutes October 20th, 2020, and standing committee of council minutes October 27th, 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? It's also passed unanimously. That will bring us to our citizens minute with council. Ms. Anderson?
No.
Okay, no citizens minute with council today. That'll bring us to our action items: accessible transportation service delivery, next steps. CAO. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. At the October 27th Standing Committee meeting, Council received a report regarding accessible transportation service options to consider in the short and medium term. These options were brought forward as at this time there's no active signed agreement to transfer the service, which is detailed in the October 27th report. The options considered were to utilize the funding approved to support the since terminated transfer of service agreement with the Evergreens Foundation in the amount of $8,000, which would provide for reduced service option until the end of 2020. As well, the use of the approved $25,000 to provide service into 2021. The level of service provided through these options at this time is sufficient to meet the current community need. However, a long-term solution is being discussed and sought with an update planned for council toward the end of Q1 2021. In order to move forward on any temporary or permanent solutions, this item was needed to come back to council for approval before the service could move forward due to the elimination of accessible transportation as a town service area decision included in the transfer of service decision in August. The recommended action tonight on this item is that council implement option 1 for the remainder of 2020 and option A for 2021 as presented to ensure temporary limited accessible transportation service are made available to allow time for an agreement with an external party for the delivery of these services to be reestablished and executed. At this time, administration is happy to receive any questions from council.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Council. Councilor Magoon.
I'd like to make a motion that council implement option number 1 for the remainder of 2020 and option A for 2021 as presented to ensure temporary limited accessible transportation services are made available and to allow time for an agreement with an external party for the delivery of these services to be reestablished and executed. And if I could speak to that, Your Worship. First of all, I just want to express my appreciation to administration for trying to find a solution earlier on that ultimately saves the taxpayer money, but yet still guaranteed a high quality delivery of service with a very reliable external partner. I think that those are the kinds of solutions that the taxpayers expect us to find as an organization. And I'm looking forward to future discussion and solutions that I hope mirror that, but in getting some of the complications worked out. So I think that's a reasonable and responsible thing to do, and I would be looking forward to supporting that in the future. In the meantime, this guarantees that the most important people in this discussion, our seniors, are well taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or comments? Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To CAO, what discussions took place to say that a maximum of 10 hours of service per week would work, based on 2 5-hour shifts for next year?
I will defer to Ms. Bouchard. It's on the Zoom call.
Yes, so that would be for 2021. For 2020, the service that we could provide would be 16.5 hours a week. And so that would be with using the allotment of funds of $8,333, keeping in mind that 16.5 hours is for the driver, and then as well as we had to consider maintenance and fuel on top of that too.
Councilor Race?
So the 16.5 is for 2020, okay, till the end of December. The, then we have the, on what page here? On page 3 of 5, it talks about 10 hours a week based on 2 5-hour shifts. So that's how we would be doing it next year, 10 hours a week, 2 times a week?
Ms. Bouchard?
That is correct, yes.
And I was just wondering, how did they come to the determination that that is all we would need, is just 10 hours a week, 2 times?
Mayor Michaels through to Councillor Race. Conversations have taken place with some of the programming that AHS provides, reviewing the most common trips that the Freedom Express had delivered. Sorry, I'm kind of stumbling around here. So in having conversations with AHS, they have certain programming that many of our clients were using the Freedom Express to access. Those programs aren't slated to be brought back due to COVID considerations and the protection of the folks that attend those programs. So at this time, with no plan in place for those programs to be reinstated, the 10.5 hours is as far as we can plan for, adequate to meet the needs of the community in the short term. For a longer term solution, that's what we're exploring right now, but into 2021, using the $25,000 that we have budgeted for is adequate to bring us through until the circumstances change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Councilor McGoon?
Yeah, and just to build off Councilor Race's question, assuming a rosier outlook, if factors surrounding COVID were to change and we found that the demand on the service increased, my understanding would be, would administration be willing to come back to council, make a presentation requesting potentially a change in funding and look at, some potential solutions to that in order to increase, access to the service?
Through to Councillor McGoon, we're exploring what's possible, and we'll be coming back regardless before the end of Q1. Should anything change in the meantime, we'll come back sooner.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor McGoon. Council, the motion on the floor. Any further debate? And seeing none, I'll call to question the council to implement option 1 for the remainder of 2020 and option A for 2021 as presented to ensure temporary limited accessible transportation services are made available and to allow time for an agreement with an external party for the delivery of these services to be reestablished and executed. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this action item this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our second item this evening, write-off request for property taxes, 133 Jarvis Street, CAOs.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Earlier this year, a request was made to administration to write off 2 mobile homes located in Hillcrest Estates in order for park management to obtain demolition permits. These requests were initially denied by administration due to outstanding taxation owing as is processed, and the request was submitted to council in an information package in September of this year. After attempts at achieving the taxes owing on a property are unsuccessful, the process for acquiring the taxes, outstanding taxes on a property is to move to tax sale. However, recouping the outstanding amount is difficult in circumstances with mobile homes when in some cases the amount owing is greater than the value of the home. This is a unique situation, and at this time I will call on Ms. Fox to provide a brief additional explanation on this and how we're planning as administration to manage anything like this that would come up in the future. Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, and Ms. Olson through to Council. So this is a topic that is fairly sensitive. It is not something that administration very rare that administration would recommend the write-off of taxation. However, we're trying to focus in on the uniqueness of the circumstance with derelict mobile homes. And you'll see that worded throughout the report. So as not to create a situation where anybody thinks that this is something that we would consider. The only reason is it's a complex situation. It's complex in we're never put up for tax sale. This is not uncommon across Canada because lots of times these homes aren't attached to land and the homes have no value, so we can't resell them. And there is a cost to demolishing them. My recommendation, working with staff to go to council, was to consider only up until the 3 years, because 3 years is our due diligence. And if we choose to just start writing these off, even in these unique situations, it doesn't really set a situation where you're requesting accountability of the mobile park owners to ensure that situations like this, they're doing their best for this not to happen. And we don't want a million requests coming in to say, okay, well, it's no one's living there, let's write it off. So we'd like to focus in on the safety risks that are there as far as fire, people squatting there, animals coming in, lots of cat issues, bylaw gets called. There's lots of extra costs. So if the mobile park owner can demolish a trailer, get a new one in, we get rid of part of the problem, we get a little bit of the taxpayer dollar back, which is our main goal, and then a new trailer is there paying taxes. And so at the end of the day, going through the pros and cons and knowing that this was something that I know one of the councillors was concerned about bringing forward as well to address this issue, and really trying to work with the mobile park managers and owners to create some collaboration to solving this problem, because this has been an ongoing problem year after year, and charging them more fines and fees really doesn't seem like a solution when you can't get the value out of the home and the penalties, tax penalties just keep adding up anyways. So what is the best scenario? We think that we're just trying to make the best of a bad situation.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Council. Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move that council approve the request to write off property tax and related penalties in the amount of $5,170.95 for the properties located at Unit 21 and 70, 133 Jarvis Street. Waiving of these amounts will occur when proof of demolition is provided by the mobile park. And I would like to speak to that, sir. So I have to start by saying thank you to administration. And typically I do not thank administration because what you bring us, that's your job. But this time I really want to thank you. This came before council as an information item and it was not moved forward. And by not moving anything forward, nothing happens. And when I say nothing happens, we don't get tax money, they don't get a demolition permit. So by voting positive to this motion, that will allow the town to collect tax monies. It'll allow Hillcrest to get a demolition permit. It will allow newer mobile homes to be brought in. They can collect rent. We will collect tax money. The more tax money that we collect, the less that we have to ask from our citizens. And today I called the managers, I called Janine, I called Teresa, just to make sure that they were aware that this action item was coming to council. And I was so happy to hear that Janine really respected the interaction that she had with administration. It was a positive conversation. And it made me think of our goal, our number 3 strategic goal, which is on our strat plan to be innovative, to be efficient, to be exceptional, to offer exceptional service delivery. And I truly, truly feel that that's what administration has done in this instance. So, you know what could have happened? We could have sat on this. Couldn't have went anywhere with no positive outcome. So because admin did bring this action item forward, we're gonna make a difference there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. Council, we have a motion on the floor and have Councillor Hawes and Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are one of the things that I struggle with because unfortunately, I mean, it's other taxpayers that it falls on the $5,170.95, unfortunately. So my question is, the administration, it states that there's a new path that follows a stringent process about the tax collection on the mobile homes and mobile home parks. I'm just curious on what path, which stringent process are we taking to try to avoid this? And I realize, listening, this is not just a Hinton issue, but what path are we taking to try to avoid these types of situations in the future?
Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'll defer to Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So the short answer to this is that as the mobile homes come up on their second year of being outstanding, they will be notified, and as of the third year outstanding, it'll go up for tax sale. And administration does everything they can to work with these homeowners, not just mobile homeowners, to almost going to their door, making sure that there's payment plan options, reaching out to mortgage companies to make sure that they've considered paying these things off, that they go above and beyond. So following the process that we do for all homes is going to be followed. This is of no mistake of anybody in the past. It is a problem that happens across Canada, that there's no value in the home, so they end up, why put it up for tax sale? So that process there is to be followed with my team going forward. And what we have requested and have noted in the report is that on a case-by-case basis, that trailers that are on the outstanding list, if there's requests made, we'll consider, and it has to be really deemed an uninhabitable home that has really no value, and that no one's willing to purchase. These are the cases where we're willing to bring this to council for consideration. And outside that, there would be a recommendation still to attempt to collect on these things. But the problem is the taxpayer is suffering either way, and the taxpayer is suffering the more that we keep an uninhabitable mobile home in a park that then can't be removed and can't be replaced by a taxpayer. So we're just adding to the debt rather than stopping it where it is and starting to bring in new tax dollars. So I hope those are three things that ensure you that we are trying to fix the problem.
Thank you, if I can. And I understand it. I mean, it's administration does their part to try to get these tax dollars. I recall the last time that we did this, we had, a citizen come and speak to the fact that we're, waiving costs of taxes on properties, and the concern of that. So I'm happy to hear that there are, trying to be more follow-up with them, and with it sticking to that 3-year, that's great. I just really encourage everybody out there, please reach out to our administration and work with them, because we don't want to see this happening, to any situation happening where we have to waive these taxes. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm glad to see that this motion doesn't entail writing off the full amount of the taxes that are in arrears, that it's the first 3 years of taxes in arrears are still going to be the responsibility of the mobile home park owner, which is, I believe, fair. In my opinion, they bear some of the responsibility for having these properties wind up so far in arrears. But the second part of what I wanted to talk about was going to be a question, and it was along the lines of what Councillor Hawes asked about future additional diligence to try and make sure this doesn't happen, which was pretty adequately answered already. But it did bring another question to mind, and that's, in the event that there is a tax sale of one of these uninhabitable properties, and because they're essentially valueless, they actually come with a liability cost of demolition and removal. If they're not purchased, does the town inherit those properties and then take on that liability of that abandoned property?
Administration.
Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, through to council. So if no one purchases a home at a tax sale, then it has to come back to council for consideration. You have up to 10 years to decide to take that property on. My hope would be to work with the mobile park owner to try and come up with a solution that's mutually beneficial. But at the end of the day, if we put it up for tax sale and we don't take it on, it sits there and the problem still exists. So I think it's mutually beneficial for the mobile park owner to work with us to maybe share that liability, but there's no written rule. And if council decides after the tax sale to take that mobile on and it's derelict and it needs to be taken down, that we do bear that cost. And that is a reason why lots of municipalities leave them, because the home isn't worth anything. Now all of a sudden you have written off taxes and you're paying money for this. So hopefully that just is innate with tax sale properties.
I can follow up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for clarifying what I suspected to be the case, and I'll leave it at that for now, but this is going to be a very interesting and difficult discussion moving forward. There's a lot of moving pieces. This is a very challenging thing that us and a lot of other municipalities are going to have to deal with. So I hope there can be a productive way figured out moving forward that this can be handled when it comes forward again in a productive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. I have myself in the queue. A question I did want to ask was, after the 3 first years of outstanding property taxes, was the mobile home park collecting lot fees for these 2 units? Administration.
Ms. Fox.
Ms. Fox?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. I can't give details of the home, but it's very unlikely that they are receiving any dollars for these trailers as they are abandoned. And no money is being paid for anything on the property.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Fox. That plays a big part in my decision for this, because hearing what Ms. Fox said before, the liability is on the mobile home. We could step in and help and work a partnership with the owners, but the MGA states pretty clearly that the responsibility of demolishing and taking off the unit is theirs only. That's the risk of their business. So we wouldn't have to take on that if no one buys the property. So that's pretty clear. So that's where I struggle. If I have clarity that they have not been collecting any rent after the 3 years, I have no problem writing this off. If there was no one in there and it's derelict, that would lean me towards. But without knowing that for sure, I have a hard time just writing off $5,200 for the owners of these lots. Not that I don't want to work in conjunction, but these are the risks that we take and they take for this. So that's my only concern. I know other councillors are in queue, so I'll wait to listen to everyone else. But at this moment, without knowing that factually, that they have not paid any lot fees after the 3 years, I wouldn't be comfortable making any decision tonight. With that, I'll go to Councillor Rendell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, this is certainly an issue where I am split, and I'm very much listening to my fellow councillors as well. Some of my thoughts. First of all, I just want to express again appreciation to administration for working not only in this case, but with other instances in our town of trying to work with taxpayers in order to bring people up to speed, as it were, and make sure that the issue of having a home is not really the case. It's a matter of how do we get you back on track. And I think first and foremost, keeping that as a priority, that's appreciated. So I just want to say that, the complicating factor here is that this area of land, it's a business, right? Yes, it's homes for a large number of our citizens as well, but it's also a business. And I mean, contextually, there's some areas where I feel like they could do better. And I've shared that before in the past. In this instance, the solution that administration is bringing to us does require that they are, responsible for just shy of $2,000 of those fees. So that gives me some solace. I appreciate that quite a bit. There is a write-off involved, and I'm balancing that against the fact that knowing the people who are living in these areas right now, this does benefit them potentially. Demolishing a unit that is empty or provides hazards to the area or is an eyesore, you know what I mean? And getting a new unit in, getting new neighbors in, creating some community, creating some taxpayers. There's some societal and some tax benefits obviously to that. So in this case, I can support this tonight. I am very much interested in where this goes in the future, understanding it is a complex problem. And that I'm not going to cease pressing other issues that are going on in these areas, but I think this is one that I can support moving forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor, through to council. For a long-term solution, and we have not went down this path, but there is a section in the MGA that does change the taxes owing to the park owner, which I haven't explored. This is a sensitive topic. There are lots, this is a complex issue, and I didn't want to go down that path, spending that amount of time if that wasn't something council wanted to entertain. But that seems like the only one other avenue. And I don't know if there's other municipalities that do it. Like I said, I haven't gone down that path, but I just want to make you aware of that alternative, that, you know, it is something that administration could look deeper into if this is information that council wants in order to address this in the future. Because if, from what you say, Mayor Michaels, in regards to, these are uninhabitable homes. People cannot live in them. They're a fire and safety hazard. I can go in camera to share information with you in one area to make you, to give information that would be very clear that they're not paying, that the bills aren't being paid anywhere. They couldn't be. And other than that, that's why these are unique situations. We do everything we possibly can to reach out to these owners and find them. Sometimes they disappear, sometimes they're gone, sometimes they're deceased, sometimes a home burns. That there's lots of variations, but it's rare that a home ends up in this state, and it's typically only a mobile home that we're dealing with.
So before I go to Councillor Nelson, if there's any information that proves, because I agree, for me, my perspective is more towards the owner, like having an ownership, and the MGA states the rules that they are liable. They must pay this, unless we make an exception, which we are entertaining tonight. But if there's any information that states that they have not received any lot fees and we have to go in camera for that, I will entertain that. But conceptually, I was just saying, without knowing for like 100%, and that was the comment that you made earlier. But if that's different, if I misinterpreted that and we do have that information that states they have not collected any lot fees, I would entertain going in camera if it's protected by FOIP in any manner to do so. But I just want to make that clear. It's a philosophical, I think, conversation we're having right now, and I'll leave it at that. Councillor Nelson.
I'll start with one question. I am struggling to understand the process in that in order for the taxes to be written off for $5,000, we need the proof of demolition, but they can't get a demolition permit until the tax has been written off. And if we have to write off the tax to get the demolition permit, how does that make sure that we get, like, to me, is it they're paying for the whole thing and then they get a credit back for the $5,100 after it's been demolished? I just don't understand how the process would work to ensure that they can get what they need and we would get back what we would need as per this motion.
C. Olson.
Ms. Fox.
Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, through to council. So based on the direction of council tonight, if this is approved, administration will allow the purchase of a demolition permit. If they don't follow through with that, they've just spent close to $400 to not demolish something. So they have to buy the demolition permit, demolish the trailers, and then once that is done, we'll write off the taxes. But that is the process we would follow.
So my follow-up question to that is, So would it be possible for a motion of council for us to just approve a demolition permit and still let them be on the hook for the taxes moving forward? So they're able to demolish the buildings and allow that property to be collecting income again and still have those taxes that the park itself would be on the hook for rather than taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a question to
Yeah,
administration?
no question specific. Could we just make a motion to approve a demolition permit without writing off the taxes? Because that's ultimately what we would be doing technically.
Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Chair, through to council. I need to understand, I'm a little bit unclear. Then the mobile park owner would still be accountable for paying all the taxes, which you're not willing to do because they pay for the demolition, which is in the thousands of dollars, so it doesn't really solve the problem. So you could make a motion to approve a demolition permit, I guess, without paying off the taxes. And then they demolish the home, get rid of it, but they're still accountable for paying the taxes, the mobile park owner.
So could I just follow up? That's exactly the question I was looking for, and ultimately might be where I'm the most comfortable because it doesn't change liabilities, it doesn't create risk to the town, but allows the demolition to happen, which benefits the neighbors. And if at some point it can be sold and pad fees collected again, then our taxpayers aren't on the hook for that $5,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I have Councillor Stashik pertaining to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and it is pertaining directly to this point. My understanding is the taxes that are in arrears are tied to the residences themselves and not the land. So if the residences are demolished and removed, there is nothing to tie those taxes in arrears to anymore. Admin can speak to that, I guess, but that's my understanding. If the actual home that's on the lot is gone, there's nothing to have those arrears taxes tied to anymore because it's as I said before, it's the home, not the property.
Ms. Fox?
Yeah, there's absolutely no incentive to pay any of it. There's no home it's tied to, there's nothing to sell, to collect. The reason you have tax sale is it puts people in a situation, obviously, where they're forced to pick their home over their taxes owing and try and figure that out. In this situation, there's no home for that, so there would be no incentive for the mobile park owner. It would just be like outstanding taxation. I can't see that they'd make any attempt to pay it. There's nothing holding them to pay it. At least in the recommendation put forward, we're getting some of the outstanding monies owing, and then we're moving on from there. This would just create a situation where more is outstanding. Yeah, they get a new home and there's taxes, but we're gonna have that outstanding amount sit there. That's from my perspective in dealing with this situation since I've been here, but I can't guarantee it. I'm just talking based on the history of this relationship.
Councillor Stashik?
Yeah, if I could follow up then. So yeah, thank you for that confirmation. So I think if the intent is to try and put the onus on the park owners to pay the full amount of the taxes that are in arrears, that this motion wouldn't be accepted then. They would continue to be, by extension, liable for paying all of the outstanding taxes because they would not be able to get a permit to demolish those units and get something else in there until the taxes were paid up in full. That's the only hammer that I can see that we have to hold over them if the intent is to try and get them to pay the full amount that's in arrears. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Rees?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I address Ms. Fox? So how does this work? I have a house, I don't pay my taxes for 3 years. So now you're gonna take my house and put it up for sale to recoup that tax money. Okay? So my house is just like those trailers in Sunset. They have not paid for 3 years. It totals $1,800, but we didn't stop at 3 years. We went another year. I don't know how many years. So we're now at $7,000. which is not right. So I'm going, the $1,800 on those two trailers is for 3 years. The 3 years they did not pay. So by saying yes to this motion tonight, we're getting the $1,800. We're not going past the 3-year period, which is important to me, because you wouldn't, I don't think you'd say to me, you haven't paid for 3 years, so I'm just gonna keep charging you year 4, year 5, year 6. Okay, you probably wouldn't. So. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, just to speak to that, Councillor Race, I think the major difference though, that I'm trying to be sensitive to is in this case, and Councillor Ostashik pointed it out for us, is that the thing that's worth, that has value that's being taxed is the trailer that used to belong to, you know, an individual who's no longer trackable and is no longer associated with that trailer. And then in this case, that unit is now left on the land that is owned by the trailer park, which complicates the issue slightly. So I think that's where I would see the difference between, you know, like you had said, you have a house and you own property. And again, I find myself in the trap of, I want to agree with Councillor Nelson. There's a part of me that's like, you know, yeah, there's a business involved here, and you take on certain risks when you have a business, you know, and you need to reinvest in your business to make sure that you and your, in this case, tenants can be proud of it. And I think there's a message I'd like to send, but there's also a bit of an understanding that there's people who are in these communities and are also currently suffering because, you know, these neighboring units, they're not in great condition. They bring on hazards, and we have an opportunity to sort of close the book on this. But really, I think what administration's bringing up, and it's an excellent point, is there's a long game to be played as well in how we deal with this in the future moving forward. So again, it's not a perfect solution. It's a good solution, I think, for right now. As it gets these units dealt with, demoed, better units in, gets people paying taxes. We get some of these taxes owed to us by, owners that are no longer around. And ultimately, it gives us some time to craft some better bylaw, better legislation at the local level on how to deal with this in the future. And it's not an easy question. So I think that's why I'm sort of apt to support this moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, continue. And I agree with you, Councillor Ryan. But you know what I like seeing here? I like seeing that new rapport with the trailer park. They are so appreciative how considerate administration was to them, opening up that dialogue, trying to come up with a plan. Because, if they wouldn't have, we'd have these trailers sitting there till the dogs came home, eh? So I would really hope that council would support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reza. Councillor Weld and Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions for admin. The two cases that have been brought forward are pretty extreme, 8 years and 6 years in arrears. And I appreciate what administration has said about taking a longer term approach and taking a new approach to some of these ones that are in arrears. How many other properties are reaching this threshold now, like beyond 3 but not quite 6, that we might be needing to deal with in the near future?
Ms. Fox?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, through the council. I had the information sent to me and my phone has died, so I'm gonna give you my best guess at the moment from visually seeing an Excel spreadsheet with a listed number of properties on there. I'm gonna say it's about, so there's no more that I'm aware of that are uninhabitable, but there are a number that go beyond 3 years. And that is probably, I'm gonna estimate about 15 to 20. But I would have to get you a better number. And we're dealing with the uninhabitable ones on a case by case basis.
Very good. Thanks for that information, Ms. Fox. I guess where I'm at is similar to what Mayor Michaels had spoke to. I appreciate the balance that's been struck here, and I'll be speaking in favor of this motion tonight because I think it does strike a balance on moving forward on a couple of these extreme cases. But what I'd like to see is any new ones that come forward, I'd like to know exactly what Mayor Michaels wanted to know, and that's how long has the trailer park been receiving revenue from the pad rent? And then any future consideration for write-offs, I would only want it to be years where they weren't collecting any revenue. So, but again, I appreciate the work that admin's done striking this balance on these two particular cases, but any future ones, I would like to have a firm understanding of exactly how long revenue's been generated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watt, Councillor Nelson, then Councillor McGee.
I'd actually like to propose an amendment to this. I still don't think I'm going to support it, but I would like to make it possibly better and more likely to support. And it'll just be to the end of the motion. And it would be providing the properties are demolished no later than June 1st, 2021. And where I'm looking to administration is that date. So one of the things is we're potentially doing them a favor to help them, but there's nothing in this motion that ties them to actually demolishing them in a timely fashion, especially understanding that the tax write-off isn't so I feel like we're taking some risk strictly based on good faith, and I would appreciate in the motion to have certainty that property can be turned over and start generating tax revenue again and be sold again, and not have it sit for 2 or 3 years before it gets demolished. So,
Ms. Fox, did you have a clarifying comment?
Yeah, so thank you, Chair, through to Council. If I can suggest making it May 1st, and the reason that would be is because we generate the new taxes in May. So we would end up having to reverse new taxes, which would be just more administrative burden.
So I'd appreciate if council would allow a friendly amendment to say May 1st.
Thank you to that, Ms. Fox. Councillor Nelson. Council, we have an amendment on the floor. So if we can speak only to this amendment, which would be added to the main motion. Any debate? And seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Now we have a main motion with the amendment added to it. Council. So in hearing all of council, to me, there's still one big fact, and I alluded to it before. I doubt the trailer park could have, or the mobile park could have collected up to about $50,000 in lot fees based on 3 years past. $50,000. I know it's probably not 50,000, but it's a lot of money, and that plays a big part into waiving fees without knowing that info. And I'm even more worried knowing that there's 15 or so other units who we're setting precedent on waiving this that are functionable, that if they don't pay their property taxes, we're going down this slippery slope. Like I said, I feel a bit more comfortable. I think I would support if I knew there was no monies collected at all. Then I see a path moving forward collectively, knowing that they're paying at least 3 years. I would like to see policy changes that make that explicit, not just what we normally do, which is, well, I hope, next time we see this, like we do that a lot. I get it. We're trustworthy in that sense, but we haven't addressed this, from A to Z as much as I believe we should. And without that, if I found out that they collected 28,000 in lot fees after year 3, and we're waiving that to owners of this, I can't justify that to taxpayers. I wish I had that info tonight explicitly, and I could potentially support it. But with that, I stand firm that it's not worth the risk for me to support something without that data. Councillor Nelson.
I struggle with a lot, especially the precedence thing. We don't have a policy that directly deals with this. We've denied things in the past. We may approve this. We may deny the next one. The next council might approve the next one. To me, it gets really tricky with things like this when you're establishing a precedence that isn't really based on a lot. And I also, you charge a certain amount for pad fees, just like any retailer charges for a product. Understand there's a certain amount of loss, a certain amount of damage, a certain amount of shrink, all of these things. That's part of your overall formula. So I'm guessing every trailer park has a certain amount of things that become derelict, and you understand that's part of the cost of doing business, and your residents are paying for that. And so now we're asking the overall residents of Hinton to subsidize a business whose product hasn't performed in the way they've wanted to perform. And there's a lot of things that the trailer park could do to, from what I understand, to reduce that risk. And yeah, with what I know right now and the precedent setting and understanding they could have collected a lot of fees, I'm just not there on being willing to set precedents on two separate properties of different years of there's just a lot of variables in here that give me a lot of cause for pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Stasher.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Councillor McGowan was in queue though.
He had waved himself off.
Oh, did you?
I did the first time, I'll jump back in.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that I'm gonna be speaking in favor of this motion either. This is something that's, if it was a one-off thing that I was pretty confident wasn't gonna come back at any time in the near future, I would likely support it, but it's not a one-off thing. This comes to, these requests for the mobile home demolition because of taxes and arrears come to us on a regular basis. This is, geez, I don't even know how many times it's been, but several times in this term that this type of request has come to us. And I've always spoken to the fact that this is a liability. This is a cost of doing business that the mobile home park takes on in the nature of their business, that there has to be an understanding on their part that there is going to be a certain amount of this type of loss, and it should be factored into their business model, and they should be able to move forward with it, understanding that that's a cost that they need to bear. I think they should have understood it in this case as well, and it should have been dealt with much, much sooner. So I'm not going to be supporting this. However, regardless of how this motion comes out, I'm going to be initiating a conversation after this is called to question about some options for the future for how taxation in the trailer parks is dealt with in Hinton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stasher. Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, and you know, I guess, first of all, let me say thanks. I appreciate the debate tonight. I think this is definitely an example of an issue where I am hearing both sides of some very, very good thoughts on the matter. And I'm walking a very fine line either way. The thing that I'm thinking out loud, and I don't think there's anyone that can answer it for me. I wonder at what point in this case, where having these lots empty becomes enough of a financial burden that the trailer court just pushes forward and pays off the taxes and demos them anyway, because they're simply losing too much over the long run to have those properties sit, derelict. And I don't know the answer to that. It's just one of the things that's running around my head. And I'll be very honest, the one fact that I had not considered tonight, the mayor brought up and some of you have spoken to, is this concept of for how many years have these pad rentals been collected, that are being asked to be written off? That's a very good point. And that's something I hadn't considered walking into tonight. And it is very much impacting my considerations at this moment. So I'm hoping to hear from more of you, and I'm very much on the fence on this.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Councillor Stasher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question for administration, and it's regarding notification of the taxes and arrears. When there's taxes and arrears, who's notified of that? Is it just the owner of the home that has taxes and arrears? Or is the park where the home is situated also informed that there's taxes payable on units that are parked on their property?
Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So the mobile park owners have an obligation to work with the town, and they are aware typically of the mobile parks that don't have taxes in arrears, and then anyone listed on title is notified, and then all mortgage or mortgage companies that have an interest in the home are notified. So there, and it's very clearly written out who you have to notify in those cases.
Sorry, can I clarify? So just to clarify then, the mobile home park owner is an interested party and they are informed that there's taxes and arrears on the property on the homes that are on their property, correct?
Yes, it's my understanding that, and I'm trying to recall the bylaws we looked at the other day, Wendy, but I think there's 2 mobile park bylaws where the mobile homeowner has to provide notification of who is all living in there, which ones have people in, and we in response provide information to them on if there is outstanding taxes owing.
Can I follow up? Knowing that now, that makes me even more adamant that I'm not going to support this motion. If the park owners are fully well aware that there is properties that are homes sitting on their property that are delinquent, that have taxes owing and arrears, and they're not taking any action to try and address that, then I believe that onus is even more on the property owners to have to deal with the consequences if they didn't take the appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eustache. Okay, council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate? And seeing none, I'll call to question that council approves the request to write off property taxes and related penalties in the amount of $5,149 for the properties located at Unit 21 and 70, 133 Jarvis Street, providing the properties are demolished no later than May 1st, 2021. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That was defeated 6-1. And council, what would we like to do with this? Councilor McGowan.
I do have a question for administration. Certainly agree with admin. I'd really like to see, the long-term policy or strategy that's involved. I guess my question is, does admin have a high-level idea? Like, is this one of those things that we're going to see come back to us in terms of standing committee to discuss the policy as it evolves? What would the next steps be on the overall guiding policy?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. This is something that administration is currently working on. There's no timeframe as far as bringing this forward to council. That said, prior to bringing anything further back to council in regard to the other trailer or mobile homes that are in arrears for decision of council, we would seek to bring the policy back prior to asking anything further of council as far as a decision.
Ms. Fox?
Can I just clarify, I think it'd be important to have a motion from council in what they actually want, because I am not clear on that. I don't know if you're looking for a policy to manage these types of situations, or are you looking for more information on other ways to have this set up to collect taxation in, like as discussed earlier, having the mobile home park owner pay for all the taxation and then collect that from there.
I do want to clarify, there are multiple options. We can move forward and do absolutely nothing and just keep the status quo. I know Councilor Eustache spoke to it before, and I actually do. But I just don't want to create a narrative that we are looking for sure to create a policy. We don't know if we want to prioritize that. So I just want to clarify. I think this is about really finding what the will of council is and what we want to do and set our timelines on that. And who do I have in queue? Councilor McGowan.
Thanks, Your Worship. If I'm to speak to that, and of course in this instance, I think I'm only speaking for myself, and I'll respond to administration's question. I think it's a very sound question. Again, a number of us around the table have spoken to the fact that this is a business, and there's certain costs associated with doing business. And I want to echo this. I appreciate the work administration has done to sort of reach out and work with the managers of the parking question. That's very important. That being said, this is an area where I think we can continue to push to ensure that there's responsibility and accountability on the owner's part. The fact that if you're going to reap the benefits of doing business in our town, there needs to be some accountability. And I think that if a policy was to exist, it would require the owners to incur the cost of doing business. And that means when things become delinquent, you got to clean up your mess, you got to clear off your lot, and you're going to get new units in. And you can't just leave them delinquent on your lots. That causes a safety concern. So I don't know if that encapsulates some of, and that's just my personal beliefs. If there was any way to get that in a policy and there were 6 other people that agreed, ideally, that's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Before I go to administration council, is there an appetite to go through a review of a policy, a report? I think that's really the question right now for us as a council, or do we just move forward with no other action? Councillor Wall. Oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that, Councilor Wong. But that's exactly what I wanted to speak to about options moving forward. I wanted to have a quick discussion, maybe move it to a standing committee meeting down the road about whether there's an appetite amongst council to look at options for how to deal with the trailer parks. And if the intent is to make the trailer park owners fully accountable for the units that are stored on their property that people are living in, then perhaps the best option to look at is to charge the parks the property tax for the property and the homes that are situated in the parks, and hold them fully accountable. And then that way it's clear to them, it's clear to the town, it's clear to everybody involved in the situation that if there winds up that there's units that are derelict, that have taxes owing, that it's the responsibility of the park owners to deal with it, and they can choose to deal with it as they will. I think that's the onus that needs to be put upon them as business owners in our community, and I think it's an obligation that council has to our citizens too, because from my perspective, we spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with these types of requests from the mobile home parks, much more than we do with the standalone residences in our community. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed and it needs to be dealt with. So we're the administration nor council spending so much time dealing with these repeated requests that continually come back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Wong.
Thanks, Mayor Michaels. Yeah, and I would agree with Councillor Stashik. I'd hate to see administration keep going through the process of all the work they put into the report tonight and trying to work with the owners and not have a clear direction from council as to what our expectation is moving forward, especially with consideration that there are so many potential properties that may end up coming back on our radar in the near future. So I think we owe it to the community and also to administration to have some sort of discussion around policy, or at least some firm expectations of what we want.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Councillor Race, Haas, and Lagoon.
No, I'm good. Mine was exactly what Councillor Stashik had said, so I'm good.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too would like to see, I don't know the details or the section of the MGA off by heart, but Ms. Fox mentioned that there was a potential possibility within the MGA. But something that strikes me with this, situation is similar to our school taxes that are collected. We collect it from our residents and then pass that along to, and if our resident doesn't pay it, then we're on the hook for it. And I see it very similar in this way, that the responsibility lies on potentially the park owners to collect those taxes and then pay those taxes to us as a community. And then if they don't, they're responsible for it and they can go back after the homeowner for it. So I definitely would like to have this conversation because there's a lot of good work been done in our term. At least I can remember 4 instances where we've done this. And I'd like to see that we don't have to do this anymore because it does put, 4 or 5, and I'm hearing 15 to 20 over 3 years. Start adding up those numbers, that's quite a few dollars over the while. So I would definitely like to have that direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Before I go to Councillor Lagoon and Councillor Nelson, it sounds like there's some strong appetite to have this conversation. So we can narrow down sort of what that information looks like in a timeline. Unless there's, an opposing thought, and with that, I'll go to Councillor.
Yeah, I would just say I agree. I think we should bring it to a standing committee sooner rather than later. And again, just trying to be a little empathetic. It's not fair to administration, understanding these are coming down the pipeline. And as Councillor Waugh mentioned, not having a clear understanding of what council's will is. So that needs to be formulated again as quickly as possible. And I appreciate the understanding and patience there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
I actually don't have a huge amount of interest in discussing this further. Every time it's come forward, we've always ended up having a long discussion and saying, no, it just doesn't make sense to do. My concern is, in my recollection at least, administration is preparing a budget right now. We've got 11 months left in our term. We've got a lot of things that we want to get done. Building a policy is something that's going to take time, and unless we motion it that way, it's likely going to take a long time to accomplish anyway. And I don't see a huge benefit in it jumping the queue of a bunch of others. I see so few opportunities for us to get a lot of work done, and I don't see this helping move the community forward right now. And if administration feels that it's in the best interest to bring it forward, then so be it. If administration says, we don't have a policy that shows that we can bring this to council, so you need to go and lobby council if you want it on the agenda, then that would be great too. I think ultimately the less time we spend on this, the better from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Green.
Yeah, for myself, this is an issue, not specifically this, but mobile homes have produced issues since I've started on council. And this is finally, for the first time at a table, I'm hearing that we might actually have some control over something that can improve the quality of life, but also put some responsibility where I think it should land fairly and squarely, and that's at the feet of the owners. And I've struggled for a very, very long time to find a way to do that. I'm hearing that that's possible, so I'd like to explore it, which is why I would support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I fall somewhere in the middle. I share the same thoughts. We have to prioritize, but this is important to relatively, at some point, this should be dealt with. And now it's picking that time. When do we want to have a conversation? I'm fine late spring, it's not something I want to touch in the next 2-3 months, especially with budget, and who knows when that'll all play out, our capital projects. And as Councillor Nelson said, we have what do we want to do in 11 months? So where does it fall? Like I said, I wouldn't support seeing this anytime soon in the next 3-4 months, but if we want to see it within our term, have that conversation and start setting it up, then I can definitely support that conversation. So with that, we still don't have a direction from council. Councillor Waugh.
I guess if we're, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to be speaking to timelines and workload, I would like to hear from administration about where they feel this fits in, because while we may not think it's a priority, the administration of this box may have to be dealing with a number of these over the next little while, then I would rather have some clear direction provided.
Let's see what we'll see.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So like I said, this is something that's kind of in early stages of conversation. We've got a lot of information and feedback from council tonight on the appetite of the solutions that council's interested in considering. That said, I'm not aware, I don't have the information, and maybe look to Ms. Fox for that as far as timelines on any future situation, either with a derelict or an inhabitable mobile home requiring to be brought to council for decision. I appreciate the inquiry into workload and capacity at this time. There are a number of policies that are in the queue. I think there's some exploration that can be done, but as far as the timeline to bring something back to council, I really need to confer with staff. This wasn't something that was necessarily on our immediate radar, so I appreciate the conversation. I don't know, Ms. Fox, if you know if there's anything upcoming to council as far as additional mobile homes needing a decision.
Thank you, Chair, through to council. So, no, specifically to that question, there's nothing coming forward. obviously, the recommendation that was brought forward was weighed on the fact of the amount of time and the length of time that mobile homes have been a concern. From my department, it does take a substantial amount of time. And if the mobile park owner decides to, this has already occurred, demolish the home anyway, without a demolition permit, they can do that. And then they go against our bylaw and then they get fined. We'd have to look at that, but those are some of the things we've dealt with on the other side, right? So there's concerns if we don't deal with this in the long term. Late spring, but I do think it is something from administration's perspective. It would be nice to find some sort of good solution so that we're not dealing with this and then not feeling, from our perspective, like we're doing our jobs in lots of sense, because they get ignored and they get left and there's outstanding taxes and everybody's wondering why, but it is just complex.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fox. Councilor Haas.
So just a quick question in regards to that, and I guess this is to administration and Ms. Fox. But you mentioned nothing coming forward, but, and I know that you didn't have the numbers directly, but I heard you say that there's 15 to 20 that are going beyond the 3 years, and the more stricter or stringent moving forward is if they reach that 3 years, then there's tax sales. I'm assuming there's quite a bit of work in regards to tax sales, if that's moving forward. So I guess that's where I'm coming from is even though we may not be writing them off, but we might going through that process. And if I recall, we were going to do that one on one of those streets, and it was a lot of work, and then we didn't have to do it. But I guess that's where I'm coming from is the sooner rather than better, because we have 15 to 20 that I don't know the state of them. They could be derelict too. I don't know, but they're in 3 years. No? Okay.
Before I go to administration, I want to really try to get council to, I think we're getting close. There's some appetite. Potentially it's about landing on a date. So is there an appetite? I know Ms. Fox, you said late spring. I have no problem with late spring, hearing what CEO Olson said. Is that sort of where we want to wrap up with tonight? And that doesn't exclude the fact that administration, and Councilor Nelson brought this up before for something else that pertains to it. Administration can continue working with the mobile park right now for any potential issues or solutions for these two and others. Like nothing prohibits administration as they're looking to this to come to council. So if we take some action in some direction on what our expectation is with the report, while administration continues this, and knowing that they can come to council to make their work easier if they find a solution, I think that's probably the best forward. And that's what I'm hearing from council. So is there anyone prepared to give a direction? Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been trying to get the mayor's attention for quite some time. He's ignoring me though.
It's the red shirt.
In the interest of moving our business forward tonight, I'd like to take a stab at a motion if I can, or a direction, sorry. That council direct administration to bring a report regarding taxation of mobile home park property and residences. To a standing committee meeting. And I'm going to be flexible on the date, hearing what administration said. I'm going to say before the end of March 2021. And if I could speak to it. The date March 2021, I just wanted some clarification from administration. This isn't looking for a draft policy or anything like that. Simply a report regarding options that we could discuss at a standing committee meeting that may come about with a direction to create policy or some next steps moving forward. So I'd ask administration if that date is feasible or not, first of all, and then I'd like to speak to the motion itself.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik, administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Looking down the table, at Ms. Fox, and the capacity and the workload that we have in early 2021 was indicated that later in the spring would work better. However, I'm also conscious of any changes. Ms. Fox indicated that May 1st to bring anything back in order to create changes in time for any tax notices. I don't know what impact there would be that way with something like this, but I would defer to her on the timeframe.
Ms. Fox?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through to council. I'm actually not sure that we could impact the budget for next year. Whatever we bring forward would probably have to have a plan change implementation, and I believe it's probably a bylaw, not a policy. So just to make that clarification. I think March is doable, definitely competes a little bit with year end and audit. So if there's some flexibility, if for some reason we feel we can't meet that date, we bring it through Action Tracker to ask for a little bit more time, that would be appreciated, and we'll try to meet that March timeline.
So if I could speak to that, Mr. Mayor, just because the request was for a report, not a draft bylaw, I thought maybe an earlier deadline might be okay. I'm perfectly fine with pushing that back to, is that April, end of June, 2021. And then, so if it's okay with council, I'd request to make that decision before the end of June, 2021.
Okay, council.
So if I could speak to it though, the timeline's not that important to me. I just want to have a discussion, right? It's not important to me that this council passes a bylaw. It's just, it needs to get dealt with in some way. So there's something that guides administration for how to deal with this when it continuously, repeatedly keeps coming up. If there's a bylaw that directs administration, this is what you do in this type of situation, or perhaps it's that there is no dealing with this situation, it's the park owner's responsibility. If it doesn't happen in our term, that's fine. It lays the groundwork for next council, and then they can take it and they can continue to move it forward or come up with something that gives administration some tools that they need to be able to deal with this when it comes forward again. Because I have every faith that it's going to. It continues to come forward, and I don't see any reason for that to stop, especially with the information that we got to now that there's potentially another 15 properties out there that are 3 or more years in delinquency. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Nelson and Councillor Haas.
I appreciate this motion, whatever the date ends up being. I'm kind of the same boat. It doesn't really matter the date so much, but I think it's just important that it stays at a high level, because there's a huge spectrum of ways that this could go. And this is the first time we've had a conversation about potentially drafting policy or bylaw moving forward, and just having a little bit of understanding what some of the best practices are. Some of the complete ends of the spectrum, which is a flat out no to a taxation of the owners themselves rather than the houses themselves. There's, I think, a lot of different ways we can go, and there could be some really safe ways, and could be some really more innovative, creative ways that we might look to as a community to take the lead on. So a high level discussion would be quite interesting, and give some really good opportunities to have some conversations with our municipal counterparts and other councils and other communities. And everybody has these same sort of dealings, and it also might offer a bit of time for the province to decide what they're doing with some of their provincial mobile home stuff. But waiting for that could be very unfruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Just a point of clarification, I guess, to Councillor Stashik. So was there a request to change it to the month of June?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, after hearing administration and their concern about being able to meet a March deadline even for just a report, I'm happy to change it to June as long as there's no opposition from council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, and I will be speaking definitely in favor of this. This is the mobile home, things about the mobile home keep popping up every once in a while, this being one of them, then, others issues as well. But this is something that I think we as a municipality can start having that conversation. And I think that's where it all starts, you know, and I agree with Councillor Nelson that this gives an opportunity to hear what other communities are doing in municipalities, you know, if they have other ways of collecting taxes or if they're in the same boat, and, you know, us being potentially taking a look at some different options, getting some momentum even for other municipalities as well. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and trying to eliminate this particular issue for the future council. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hollis. Councilor Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a question for admin. If we do bring a high-level report with some different options and best practices that are existing elsewhere in June, would that realistically leave enough time to possibly put a bylaw in place before the fall?
Administration.
Through to Councillor Waugh, it depends on the conversation that surrounds the options and the will of council. A bylaw such as this would be complex and would require some substantial discussion around the table. It could come back several times, so it's difficult to know. It would come to standing for discussion. It might have to come back one more time, and then with the council schedule would come to a regular meeting and be given readings at that point.
Thanks. And the reason for me is, you know, I know Councillor Stashik said he wasn't worried about whether or not we pass anything in our tenure, but for me, I think this is one of the few avenues we have to define our relationship with trailer park ownership and management. And I think it might be long overdue. So for me, my expectation or my hope would be that we do use the information that comes to us to have an informed discussion to try and create a bylaw that best fits the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Waugh. Council, you have a motion on the floor. Any further debate or discussion? Seeing none, call the question that council direct administration to bring a report regarding taxation of mobile home park property and residences to a standing committee meeting before the end of June 2021. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this action item this evening? And seeing none, thank you administration and council for that productive dialogue. That brings us to our third item for this evening. Approval to write off outstanding landfill accounts in town of Hinton accounts receivable. CEO Olson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. This item is before council tonight to manage uncollectible landfill accounts and 3 municipal accounts receivable, as they are unable to be recovered by the town through attempts made by administration and our collection agency. This practice follows the accounts receivable collection and write-off policy number 105. And the recommended action is that council directs administration to write off the outstanding balance of $2,539.41 of delinquent landfill accounts receivable. And further, that council directs administration to write off the outstanding balance of $26,075.29 of delinquent accounts receivable. Administration is prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you, CEO Olson. Council. Councilor Nelson.
Just had one question. What is the purpose of them being on separate line items rather than one total together?
The administration.
I believe, and I'll look to Ms. Fox to provide some clarification, that the landfill accounts receivable is managed separately than our town finances. Ms. Fox, if you had anything to add to that, that's my understanding.
Ms. Fox.
Yeah, thank you. Landfill account financials, just as Councillor or CAO has said, is a separate set of financial statements that we consolidate, and that request was taken to the authority to respect their approval process, and then brought to council for formal approval after they've approved of it as well.
Councilor Nelson.
I'll defer. I was going to make a motion, but if there's more questions, I'm fine.
Councilor Sashi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question, and it's regarding the municipal accounts receivable. Most of the amounts are relatively small, save for the one item number 3 of $16,595.51. I'm just I'm wondering if administration can shed any light on how a municipal account can get to that level and then remain uncollectible, and if there's anything that potentially has been done or can be done in the future to, prevent a balance of that high becoming uncollectible.
C. Olson.
I'll defer to Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, through the council. Absolutely, that one there jumped out at me as well. The problem with that one there is it's a bulk water account. There was a problem, from my understanding in the past, with how bulk water customers could go and purchase. That has long time since changed. The problem with this one is it's over 7 years old, and it's went through every attempt at a collection agency, and now it's beyond the point of even that. So from my perspective, coming into the town, the accounts receivable from the current administration over a period of time now, the accounts receivable collection system here is impeccable. It's probably the best I've seen in a municipality I've been to. But we are looking back at a number of areas that we are trying to clean up. I can't say that any of the current situations are in this state, and we do everything again possible. But unfortunately, this is one that has gone through the process, and then now it's beyond the 7 years and the attempt to collect. And sometimes these businesses go out of business and they're no longer attached to that corporation number, and you can't collect from them anymore. And in the case of bankruptcy, the other thing is anyone on this list, although it's not published, for us, we keep this list and they are on a do not remit, and they are not allowed to do further business with the town of Hinton. And even if it's written off, the list is there. And if they want to do business with the town of Hinton again, the amount becomes payable. So it might be written out of our financials, but we request that amount to be paid before they can do further business with the town of Hinton.
Thank you, Ms. Fox.
Can I call you up? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are there mechanisms in place then that limit the amount of credit that businesses can have, or the amount of time that they can be outstanding before they're cut off, so they don't accrue such a big amount outstanding? Ms. Fox.
Yeah, thank you. So right now, there's nothing written in the policy other than it's 90 days, if you are more than 90 days outstanding. And I think this is where the current administration, from my perspective, has done a bang up job of making sure that is being reviewed on an up-to-date basis, and any accounts that are going beyond that point are no longer allowed to continue to do business, and no holds barred. There's company that my husband works for, sorry, cut them off. No, like we stay strict to that, and we are trying to follow that very stringently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stasha. Councilor.
I just want to express appreciation for that last policy that you elaborated on, that, re-incurring the cost if you're come back to do business at a later date. I guess just looking for a little elaboration on that point. If it's a numbered company, and it folds, and then the same person is running a new numbered company, but the town is aware that they were connected to this old debt, will we still pursue that? And I realize that's really getting nitty gritty, but I'm just, because I know how the business world can work with numbered companies, so just curious.
Ms. Fox.
Yeah, I think there's some legalities to that make it hard for us to deny somebody's new business, and we don't have the details behind that. So typically, we just try to stay on top of the 90-day rule.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just, but further to that, I still appreciate the position of the town in seeking to collect those funds at a later date if they come back to do business with the town. I think that's good policy.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Councilor Nelson.
I'd like to move that council directs administration to write off the outstanding balance of $2,539.41 of delinquent landfill accounts receivable, and that council directs administration to write off the outstanding balance of $26,075.29 of delinquent accounts receivable. If I could speak to its cost of doing business, overall, these are in really good shape. Looking at some of them that are more than a decade old. It's not something we're going to collect, and I appreciate moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate, questions? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Thank you, administration and council. That will bring us to our fourth item, land use bylaw amendment 1088-15, CAO Olson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through the design charrette and pro forma findings presented to council last week on the Bhutan Avenue town-owned property, a need to move to direct control district to allow for the preferred development of the land to occur is outlined in the report that council saw last week. This change will allow for the intent and regulations to achieve the outcomes included in the design charrette report and for affordable or attainable housing to be prioritized on this parcel. The recommended action for this item tonight is that council, my apologies. My goodness. Maybe I'll read off the report. That council give land use bylaw 1088-15 first reading is presented, and further that council schedule a public hearing on December 1st, 2020 at 4 p.m. in council chambers to hear public comments on bylaw 1088-15. Mr. Vanna is present tonight to assist in answering any questions council might have.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Councilor Magoon.
No questions, your worship. I'd like to move the council give land use bylaw number 1088-15 first reading as presented. And then just speaking to that briefly, it's just an important part of the process before even getting close to a third reading. We're going to have to give this first, move to a public hearing, give citizens and concerned parties a chance to interface with council. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. The council will give land use bylaw 1088-15 first reading as presented. Council, all those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Council, Councilor Nelson.
I'd like to move the council schedule a public hearing on December 1st, 2020 at 4 p.m. in council chambers to hear public comments on bylaw 1088-15. And if I can speak to it, I've received a lot of questions around curiosity of what is happening. I think getting this taken care of early in the process rather than late in the process will really help reduce the likelihood of NIMBYism and also encourage more community buy-in and participation in this whole process and really build collaboration throughout. So I'm happy we're doing this, and I feel like it's going to be pretty quiet because I think it makes a lot of sense what we're doing, and I'm really proud of where we're getting to with that land and moving forward some of the goals of this council. So I applaud everybody that's been involved to get it to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councilor Magoon.
Just a question for administration. Would my assumption that some of the planning documents related to this would be on display for the public as they entered the foyer to peruse if they weren't as familiar with the project as it's been presented so far?
Tia Olson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Planning documents will be attached to the agenda. We can print out copies. We're very, this may be one of the first times that council chambers is open to the public and to hear public comments. It'll be open for the budget deliberations as well, but for some members of the public, it might be their first time back. We just want to make sure we're following any COVID measures and protocols. So I don't want to commit to having paper copies distributed, but we'll do what we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, your worship.
Council, any further debate or questions for the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council schedule a public hearing on December 1st, 2020 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers to hear public comments on bylaw 1088-15. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our fifth item, Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee appointments. Tia Olson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. As a follow-up to the Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee appointments that occurred at the organizational meeting of council, there's a further update tonight, and I believe Councillor Nelson, as member of the Youth Council, has some information to share tonight.
Yeah, I don't have a whole ton to share, but the tone of the discussions is there's actually a lot of interest in the youth in taking part in that, partly for the decision-making process and the direct impact on the community that group has, and also for the mentorship and the learning opportunities. It was, so there are 3 different members of that committee that expressed interest. All 3 are ones that served on the committee last year, and all I would say are on the more mature end of the scale, both age-wise and experience-wise. The challenge for them is it's a day out of school, plus preparation and potentially a large workload. And also it's a very collaborative group. And I think when there are 3 people interested, I don't know that group would be ready to vote on who the one person could be. And with it covering 3 intakes, it just seemed to make a lot of sense to make sure it wasn't too much workload, but also give 3 different individuals a great opportunity to impact this community and serve under some of the people that are on that committee that are leaders in this community and do a great job of analyzing that data. So basically the ask is that we come back to council and ask council if there was an appetite to allow a different student from the Youth Advisory Council to participate in each of the 3 grant intakes over the next 14, 16 months, whatever it is. So thanks for consideration.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council.
If there's no question or discussion, I'll happily make the motion that Ms. Anderson has, I believe, ready. So I'd like to move that Lila Underwood, Ethan Yonka, Cadence Rogiani are each appointed for an intake as Hinton Youth Advisory Council representatives for the 2020-2021 Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councilor Haas.
I'd like to speak in favor of this. I think it's a great opportunity for each one of them to get that experience. And I don't know for certain, but the day out of school, I'm sure there's something that if they were to speak to their guidance counselor or something, I think they could be worked into, whether it's work experience or whether it's something, and, I'm not looking at anybody in particular, but I think that I'm sure something can be worked out that way, because I know the school is very amenable to give students those opportunities. So, but I definitely speak in favor of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Councilor Magoon.
Not speaking from any kind of position on this, outside of this room. I'm very happy to support this. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the students. One of the things that we try to get kids involved with at the school are different avenues for getting involved in the community and being, plugged in citizens. So something like this is a tremendous opportunity, and I know we would be happy to explore however we can to help facilitate that. So I'm very happy as a counselor to support this.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Councilor Nelson.
And just one point of information for council. One of the requirements to receive bursaries is volunteer hours, and this was determined by the committee that it would constitute volunteer hours. So if any of you think taking some time off school shouldn't constitute as volunteer hours, then I would say speak now. We can take that back to the group, but the understanding is this would contribute towards their volunteer hours as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, any further debate on this matter? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Anything further for this item this evening, Council? And seeing none, we'll go to information items. We have 1, Council information packages 1 and 2. I'll entertain a motion or questions. Councilor Nelson.
I'd like to move that council accepts council information packages number 1 and number 2 for November 3rd, 2020.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councilor Haas.
Just before we do that, I think it's, to emphasize the public transit streaming fund that we were successful in getting that fund, correct? Or being part of that fund. So is that the letter I'm reading correctly?
Yes, through to Councillor Haas. So we've made through the first step in that process. So we haven't received the funds yet,
Okay.
but the first step was to work with Minister McIver and to put forward a list of projects that we were considering for fund, as well as to confirm that we were moving from the transportation use and into the COVID resiliency response use. So that was that step was completed. And so further to that, Minister McIver and his ministry will be looking for some additional information on the project. So we're waiting to hear back from Minister on the next step, but we're poised and ready to follow this through.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to, just to emphasize or bring that forward, that we are met that first step in working towards those funds. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously, and that will bring us to our reports for this evening, and I will start to my right with Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have one thing to report, and that was I attended the Youth Advisory Committee meeting. I noticed that the 4 kids who were returning, just in that year, there was so much maturity gained by them. I really feel it's going to be a good group, and I look forward to the year. Thank you.
Councillor Race, Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. One item as well, and that's regarding SEAC. Their public feedback survey for this fall will be made available later this week, and it will be concerning COVID. So just some general questions to gauge how residents are doing, how they feel the community is doing in regards to COVID, and also specifically to some of the town's response to COVID with regards to safety precautions. It's going to be available online. There's also going to be paper copies available at a number of different locations. You'll be able to link to it on the SEAC Facebook page at the very least. So it is going to be due back 3rd week of November, and then SEAC, depending on what the meeting schedule is like for council, will be hoping to present their findings either in December, if that's doable, or sometime early in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Magoon.
No major reporting, just I want to say thank you for the time I've had in order to be a member of the golf board. It's a bit of a change. It's been a bit of a long haul there. I've appreciated every minute, and we've certainly seen a lot of changes. I'm proud of the work that we've done, having come into that board in a very different set of circumstances. I appreciate the work that administration has done, the other board members have done in order to solve some very complex problems and to be able to sort of transition. I think I feel good about that. I feel good about where we are right now, and I'm excited to see which committees I can tackle next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. I do want to say publicly that although everyone on council does great at their committees, I think Councillor Magoon really showed passion and really how we should be on a committee. He was always updating council. He was very transparent, communicative, and I appreciate your work that you did on that committee. It really demonstrated you wanted to be there, and you were involved through a process that was not always easy to at times. So I do really appreciate your time on that committee.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I re-emphasize one thing too? It's hard for the community members to see because they see the golf board working and they see, council giving feedback, but there was a lot of the moving parts in here that wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of administration, because there was some complex financial work at play here and legal work at play. So I do want to express, my appreciation to administration for all the administrators involved, because this touched a lot of departments. And so I really do appreciate how that all came together. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Nelson.
I had a few things to go. I was able to attend the second DMF presentation, which the first one was very informative. The second one was very action oriented and in some ways awkward. It was really interesting to see kind of the push, and I was really happy with Mr. Kovac, our economic development officer, saying this can't be a town thing. There needs to be buy-in, and seeing that buy-in picked up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes and the parties that have all committed to being involved. I think the progress that's been made in the last 2 meetings is beyond what's happened in a decade on something that could really improve our community, improve our tourism offerings without coming at any cost to the taxpayer. So just hats off to the groups that have hosted in their facilities and the attendance and the ownership that people have shown. I was able to virtually attend the last BSN put on by Alberta Labour. It was actually a pretty big regional push. They were able to get Todd Hirsch, who's the chief economist for ATB. And generally, if you've heard Todd Hirsch speak, he's very good, but it's kind of the same thing over and over. But his take on where we are right now and how we're coming out of COVID was really interesting. It was a lot more optimistic than I had expected from an economist. And it was well attended and extremely good. I was able to also attend the Rcmp town hall that had our staff sergeant and a couple others involved. Not a huge attendance and viewership, but there are things that we do that are important to do regardless of what the uptake is. And virtual, I think, is wearing thin on everybody, and people just want human connection again, especially with someone like our staff sergeant. So looking forward to when those things can be more in person again. Youth Council was awesome. We're already 4 meetings ahead of where we were last time. We're not establishing terms of reference. Those are there. There's a lot of progress, and the amount that people were sharing and collaborating already has been great. And the theme already seems to be working on projects and initiatives around community togetherness. So I was really impressed with the group. And then we had Beaver Boardwalk Committee yesterday, which I think will probably be some things coming to council in the near future. Just really trying to figure out where we're going with that. Understand that there's now funds, which that committee wasn't necessarily expecting to be dealing with. So kind of at a bit of an inflection point with that group, and interested to see where it goes. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too, and despite the fact that I was only able to go to a few golf board meetings, but I did enjoy also being the alternate on there. I did run into one golf board meeting or a society that were sad to see us not be part of that anymore. They really did value the input and the presence of council and also having administration there. So I think we will be, the town itself being involved will be missed, I think, and who knows what the future brings. But as for the library, our library is now currently open to the public. Hours are a little bit different, but there is some juggling of hours and staff-wise. And the biggest consideration was COVID and the amount of extra work that staff had to have more staff on at a time to allow for cleaning and sanitizing different areas. So there was some juggling to get those hours to where they're at. The stacks are open. However, the stacks, if you do touch a book or whatever, it goes on a cart and gets put aside for 48 hours out of the circulation. They also have a time limit on the computers. And thankfully, they've also worked with the town to utilize the space where the adult learning used to be in the back, where there are study spaces for our university students and other post-secondary students that need a quiet area to study. So they are bookable, so they can be called the library to book those spaces. Great little spaces too. There's windows, there's good light in there. So, and they apparently have been utilized quite well throughout since they've been opened. What else? Oh, and there's a maximum of 35 people in the library at a time. So there's a sign-in sheet book and they keep track of that. So other than that, I also too went to the Rcmp town hall meeting, and I guess the definition of turnout I thought was pretty good. It was 32 people on there that were watching, because we were watching, anticipating and seeing it go up. So I really thought that was seemed to be a reasonable turnout. But there were some great questions and a lot around traffic. Some concerns about that and the utilization of, with Rcmp partnering with our protective services as well. But good turnout. I think Staff Sergeant Murphy did a great job too of just an overall look at where we're at in our area. Also attended the Respite Care Community Input Session virtually. It was hosted at the Bridges, and our Charlene was the I guess the MC of it. I know Mayor Michaels was there in person. A lot of good conversation. A lot of we got the minutes from FCSS here not long ago, but really a lot of questions to be answered in regards to the responsibilities of the province. And so they've actually put a couple of groups together as a result of it to look at, non-medical respite care and looking at an elected official for lobbying the provincial government. And then the group 2, housing for people with disabilities. Now this group hasn't been established yet, but in 2021 they're looking to establish and looking at housing for people with disabilities as well in our community. And it's interesting when we look at the stats real quickly, but they look at with 51 families registered in Alberta Family Support for Children with Disabilities. There's 8 in Jasper currently and 43 in Hinton. So we have quite a few people, in our community that could benefit from that work. So it was good, informative, and a good conversation. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I also attended the Beaver Boardwalk Committee meeting yesterday. Nothing in particular to add beyond what Councillor Nelson talked about, so won't go and recover ground that's already been covered. The other meeting I attended recently, there was first meeting in quite some time of the Hinton Regional Economic Development Coalition. And because it was the first meeting in quite some time, it was more of just a opportunity to touch base and reconnect with each other and kind of share what's been happening in the community with the members. And the one thing that did happen of note was that the coalition has a new chair. So I want to just extend congratulations and appreciation to Louise Gale for taking on the chair duties of the coalition. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. For myself, I guess I'll dovetail off HREDC. I do want to thank administration and obviously Louise Gale for stepping up and being the chair, but she did it knowing that the town of Hinton is going to be collaborative and work with her to do so. So that is ultimately the most important thing when it comes to municipality, is working with other people, other stakeholders in our community who actually who do things. So it was nice to see that collaboration, that positive energy, and again, thank you, Ms. Gale, for stepping up regarding that. BMO, I did want to touch on timelines a bit. We're looking to meet in early December, and as per section 3.1.3, if I recall correctly, we'll look to bring forward recommendations on where these funds will be allocated to a meeting in January. That's sort of the plan. Nothing's 100% concrete, but we're aiming for January 12th or 19th standing committee meeting to see those recommendations, and the will of council can decide how we move forward with that. I did partially attend the FCM Sustainable Communities Conference. I think Councillor Nelson was talking about sort of people being kind of tired. The one good thing, and I already reached out to Barry Morishita, I know he's AUMA, but one thing that was a success was a panel. We had a panel on resilient communities, and we only had 7 people. And what I've noticed is the only thing that works in the virtual world is a threshold of maybe 10. I think it's closer to 7 or 8 people that forces you to be engaged. I don't know if it's possible all the time if there's 4,000 or 5,000 people at an event, but if there's only 500 people at an event, 300 people, that is a critical factor. And I've shared my thoughts with the AUMA president that to have panel sessions where it's 100 people and you can just duck out and do other things, that is a detriment to I think online or Zoom. So that was beneficial. Social exclusion, economic inequality, and really, obviously they were talking about green energy, things of that nature, but really the message is our communities have to reflect our communities, everyone, diversity, getting different perspectives, whether it's different races, different genders, things of that nature. That is going to really drive sustainable communities, because we all have different approaches or different insight on that. But if it's not reflected in other levels of government, other businesses, there's a fundamental flaw in there. So a lot of talk was on that. The keynote speakers were Dr. Wilkinson and Catherine McKenna, and they had a big focus on humans being the biggest asset that we have. So nothing earth-shattering, but still really building that trend. But it's like I said, if you can share the message, if you believe it, if you don't, I think there's still some work to be done on where we land. But let's share that message that if we can make Zoom meetings or conferences better, we have to share those thoughts. So reach out to FCM, AUMA, other committees that you're on, or other groups that we have to spread that word, because there's a lot of lost productivity in groups of 15, 20 or bigger. And honestly, we're wasting, I think, our time and money. The good thing is, though, we save a lot of travel costs, which is nice, but let's get this right. Because if this is our world for the next 12, 18, 20 months, let's be effective. And I had a Pine Beetle committee meeting, but not our committee, but this is a mitigation committee that Bruce Mayer puts on, Deputy Minister of Forestry for the province of Alberta. And I just forwarded to council earlier today the slide show. Mr. Under Schultz was there too. Pine beetle, I think I mentioned it before, really took a hard hit last winter. They think 98% of the larvae was killed, that didn't survive. The extra funding of $5 million previously, and the recent funding of $68 million. So that committee only meets every 6 months. But right now we're in a really good position. Richard Brian was attending that meeting. So we obviously wanted another cold front of 40 minus 40 for a week or so. But overall, West Fraser seems to be in a good position with our FMA, and we're in really good standing overall. So let's hope for another cold winter and really get ahead of it. And I think that covers it for myself. And with that, our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I just want to take a moment and echo the mayor's welcome to Ms. Sandra Rendell, joining us tonight as our new Legislative Services Coordinator. She's been in a kind of an observation role tonight. It's her second day, and we look forward to her taking on a more active and involved role in council meetings as she settles in. Lots of great experience she brings to the table, so I just want to welcome her as well. So really glad to have you on board. A couple of other things that I want to touch on. Last week, I completed an organizational alignment within the town of Hinton with a few key personnel and organizational structure changes. Information has been shared with council previously and with the organization itself, but more information is coming to the public in a release this week. But I did want to touch on and acknowledge a couple of the key personnel changes tonight, including, I guess 3. So taking a look at the position that I vacated to come and be your CAO, the Strategic Services Manager role has been filled by Ms. Heather Way in an interim capacity for much of this year. She's brought professionalism, dedication, and some really good work. We're reflecting on the golf course, the support that she provided to that process. So I'm pleased to I guess announce tonight that she has accepted the Strategic Services Manager role in a permanent fashion, and will be continuing to provide that great service to internal and external customers moving forward. As well, looking into Protective Services Department and the growth that department has seen over several years, and now looking at the move of health and safety from corporate services into protective services. The scope of that department has grown in such a way that we've looked at creating, moving that department to a division. So with that change, Todd Martins, our fire chief and protective services manager, has accepted the role of protective services director and fire chief. So that's a substantial change, and really happy to share that he's stepping into that. He's provided some really key leadership in that area over the last number of years, and look forward to seeing where he takes that moving forward. So congratulations to him as well. And then finally, I wanted to share with everyone that Mr. Peter Fana, our Development Services Director, will be leaving us to enjoy retirement at the end of November. So he has worked in and with municipal government for 40 years. So he's closing off a very robust profession, I guess, working in municipal government. So I just want to thank him for all of the support and work that he's done in advancing areas within development services, and we're sad to see him go, but well-deserved retirement there. So those are a couple of the key personnel items that I wanted to share. There is more to this, and that will be shared in a public release in the next day or so. So please, the public that's watching, take a look for that. And one other item for council's benefit, I was just shared this yesterday afternoon from FCSS. So just an update on some grant process that FCSS department's undertaken. So they've recently submitted 3 grant applications totaling $125,000. One application is through the New Horizons for Seniors program for a town-run space for seniors to learn and to work on projects and build social connections. This is key, as it's done in collaboration. The grant application project idea was developed in partnership with HELP. So that's a good collaborative opportunity for FCSS and the group with HELP. I'm looking forward to hearing the result of that. The other 2 applications are through the Government of Canada's Community Support Fund. One application is to develop a sensory space for people with disabilities. The other is for Community Pass project to help people with disabilities connect with community programs. So some good work being done in that regard, in partnership with the Hinton Abilities Network. So we're waiting on the grant decisions. We're expecting to hear something in November, early December, and I will share an update with council and the public at that time. So that's everything that I have tonight.
Thank you, CAO Olson. Any administrative inquiries tonight? Any notices of motion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Nelson.
Move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.